that this evening we have the beautiful and wonderful and gorgeous Christa Campsall. And yeah, just thought that we'd hand over to you, Christa, and you can just share whatever you want, where you're at, and what you're seeing at the moment, or what's going on for you. And just so that everybody else knows, this is a conversation. So if you do want to join in, do you want to save questions, Christa, or do you want them to ask you questions as they go?
Like, if anybody wants to comment or have questions, that's whenever
Yeah.
that.
So you can just unmute yourself if you want to speak, or raise your physical hand or your little digital hand, and we'll be watching out for you. And there's the chat as well if you want to put any questions in the chat, and I'll keep my eye on Facebook. So I'll hand it over to you then, Christa.
And the jokes around here are, is it January? Is it September? What day is it? Nobody knows. We're kind of like in a time warp. Every day seems the same because we're basically we basically stay home and just go for walks in the neighborhood and run errands just when we need to. So it's a different reality than we're used to, for sure. The other day was a real treat. We went for a walk in our son's neighborhood. He lives on the island as well, Salt Spring Island, with his young family. And we went for a walk in the neighborhood. They live right on the beach, which is fantastic. And the dog doesn't mind, goes swimming in the ocean, even though it's not warm at all. But that was such a treat just to see some. I love my husband. He's a great guy, but it was just great to see some other faces in real life. But anyway. It's interesting. 1 week ago, it was the birth date of Sydney Banks. He was born 90 years ago, and it's due to his discovering the three principles and teaching whoever was interested, teaching so freely about them. And it's because of these three principles that we're having this conversation today. So just thought I'd mention that. It's like every day we're so grateful that Sydney Banks did share what he uncovered, and also so grateful for all the materials, the books and the video lectures and audio lectures that that he published, that we can access so freely and easily these days. So today, well, I'm a teacher, retired from public school teaching after many decades, and I've also worked in special education for many years. At the end of my career, probably the last 12 years was special education, inclusive education, or learning services, different names for it. And it was really because of my then friend, Bob, who's now my husband, coming to see me when I was a university student, and sharing some insights he'd heard from attending a lecture Sid had given about happiness being inside and thought creating reality, that really rocked my world and really changed how I lived and saw the world. I was indeed ready to quit education because I couldn't reach the hard to reach, or the kids who are shut down and frozen. And no one really was at the time. And the methods that were offered us were really way too intellectual and really ineffective. So coming upon these principles and just having the busy mind just naturally settle down so that your intuition can be synchronized with the intellect, and then all of a sudden you see how to connect with these children and youth who are struggling or acting out or shut down. So I was really it was a profound impact on my personal life. I was much happier, not looking for happiness outside. And professionally, I really saw that, wow, I think I'll continue with my education. And I did, and became a teacher and loved it. For worked, like I said, in the school system, K-12 for many years. I thought of, when I was invited, I'm like, what Derrick's like, what would you like to talk about? And I thought of the idea of when you have peace of mind, you naturally do the self-care that's relevant in the moment. Because I see, I'm on Twitter. I love my Twitter teacher connections, and I see folks really putting in lots of regimens and things that they think will help them with self-care. And then it kind of compounds because teachers, as we know, are so busy. And then they add guilt on that because they didn't do the ritual or the technique that they promised themselves they would to tap into their peace of mind. So my point is that out of peace of mind, we determine what is the self-care for us this day or this moment. And it made me think of a youth I worked with. So I just want to tell a little bit about his story. So I was a high school teacher. Here, that means grades 9 through 12. In grade 12, you have your graduation, and then you go on to post-secondary or trades or get a job, whatever. So this boy was transitioning into grade 9. And of course, his mom and he had high hopes and goals of high school being much, much different than the middle school experience. And unfortunately, he could not cross a threshold. He could not get himself into a classroom or group situation. So being program manager, he had special needs. I put him in a program of a smaller setting. It was still part of our high school, but it was a smaller setting and just different guidelines and rules and so on. So we enrolled him in that setting, and it was all pretty fine and good, although basically he was just on his computer the whole time. And then in the fall, his mom announced one day that he was not allowed the computer anymore at all. And so the teachers of that program made that the rule for him. And it turned out very badly. He really couldn't handle being there without his computer to focus on. So it went from bad to worse, and there were incidents of violence, and it was not a good scene. So we held a big meeting. I called a large meeting and chaired it. And I mean, there's a principal, vice principal, the teacher of the program, the education assistants, the social worker, the psychologist, the counselor, the community counselor, myself, you know, just a cast of, there must have been 12 of us. And then his dad, who lived in another community, his dad was, you know, on the phone. So we had a good meeting and laid out a few simple things that we could all agree on would be in this youth's best interest. And then there was another incident of violence that day, actually. And I remember thinking, you know how some thoughts just stick out. I remember thinking, we may not have a program for this boy. And it was, I had to accept that, and not, it was quite powerful for me because I realized you cannot force these things. If everyone's not on board and if it's not going well, you just can't push it. And it was quite something to realize that it may not work. And I guess a part of me, it had always worked. We'd always figured out something, but it was just that unattachment was really helpful to me. That whatever the outcome would be the outcome. I was really fortunate that my husband went from being a business person, very successful business person, and he'd had enough of that and retrained as a youth coach. And he was hired as an education assistant and job coach at the high school where I worked. So, I used his services. And Bob knew this boy from the middle school and had quite a nice rapport with him because he used to drive him to therapeutic horseback riding. So for Bob, I'm like, because the boy was, because of the violence, was only allowed a few hours of school. So I'm like, okay, Bob, meet him at the public library, and under the umbrella of career education, you'll speak with him before he goes to the volunteer work at the animal shelter. And after the volunteer work, you go back to the library and debrief that, and basically talking about life and thought and mind. And Bob did that, and it was good. It was really good. And then after this one volunteer experience, Bob went the next morning to the alternate setting just to check in on him. He just thought it would be a good idea. And it was a very intense, chaotic situation because there'd been more violence. And the teacher was like, Bob, can you talk to him? And so he did. He spoke to him very directly and profoundly, and maybe 20, 30 minutes, something like that. And the boy literally, it broke through. What Bob was saying from his heart to this child, this youth, really broke through, and everybody could feel it. It was quite powerful. I wasn't there, but the other assistant in the building phoned me and where I was in my office in my building, and said, wow, Bob's Obi-Wan Kenobi, you should see what just happened. And Bob connected with this child who'd since age 3 had this busy racing thoughts that kept him from enjoying any group situation. Bob was able to break through to him. And I was listening to something of Sid's the other day, and I typed it out because I thought, wow, this is exactly this boy's experience. Once you're ready, you will have the experience of hearing. The experience of hearing for the first time in your life is the first true step. You contact this inner side of life, inside this spiritual side of life. At that second, you become the ruler of your own world because you see what you are. And that really describes what happened for this boy. And from then on, his life was different. Bob went the following day again to check in on him, and the boy was like, I know I'm not supposed to touch anyone because of all the violence, right? He says, but I just have to hug you. And his mom contacted me, and we all knew the jig was up. He was starting a new life. This was right before winter break. When he came back, I'd created a program of very simple things. And it wasn't like full on academics, but very simple things I gave for him to do each day. And by the spring, he was like, they used to say, oh, he's our star student. He was able to do his work, enjoy the interactions with the other kids in the program, and get some sport and exercise. And then he had some music and other things going on as well. So very profound what happened. Also, at some point, I gave his mom a copy of The Missing Link. And that really helped her see the potential and feel her own peace of mind as well. a little bit more to the story just to wrap it up, but then there's summer break, yay. And then that next fall, of course, the mom and the boy had bigger goals because he'd been so successful. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do a novel study with him, one-to-one. So he and I read Dear Liza, and he would do reflections and we would discuss. I just had to really see where his thinking level was at. And his thinking level was on par with his peers, without a doubt. So we read Dear Liza together, and then I enrolled him in an English 10. He had an EA support still. But when he wrote the government exam, grade 10, we have quite a big government exam for English, and he got like 70% on the exam, and everybody's rejoicing. This kid has found his peace of mind. Wow. And is successful. I retired that year from that school, but I do know that he was successful finishing his program, and Bob and I would run into him at the grocery store where he got a job after he graduated. So it was so powerful. One person finding their peace of mind ripples out. You can imagine how that rippled out into the culture of that setting, where when he was having all these busy, racing, anxious thoughts and really having everyone feel insecure, to finding his peace of mind and really enjoying the setting and making his own progress.
It's so moving, and so speaks to the potential in everyone, and often we can see the potential in other people, but we don't see it in ourselves, or we think, you know, we're not good enough, or we haven't got enough, or we don't know how to say something. Or to me, that just shows, I mean, for you who have probably never ever said, I don't think we can find something, you know, I can imagine then what that situation was like. And then still to be able at that moment to let go. And then the wisdom comes through to let Bob, and I can vouch that he is like Obi-Wan Kenobi. And let Bob, you know, have that conversation, and Bob speaks to him and gets through. I mean, it's just delightful. Thank you. Really, really moved me.
One beautiful thing which ties to the kind of the theme of today is when he found his peace of mind, he discovered his self-care. And that was, he loved to like run or walk to school. It really kind of energized him, plus settled him down. So isn't that beautiful? Out of peace of mind, our wisdom, our intuition guides us to what we need in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad that you raised that, because it's so compelling, isn't it, to have routines and rituals. And I've noticed that if you know, oh, I want to do this reading every morning, and then there was the reading, and then there was the yoga, and then there was the meditation, and then before you know it, you got 2 hours of stuff to do before you start a busy day. And of course, when you get busy, guess what happens? You don't do any of that, and then you beat yourself up because you didn't do any of that, and so on. And I've definitely noticed that. Yeah. I never put it that way before, that when you have peace of mind, you know what self-care you need in the moment, and you just do that.
Yeah.
And that can look different on a daily basis.
Yeah. Sid makes the distinction between the act of meditation and the state of meditation. And I think that's really important, because sometimes it is a walk, or sometimes it's sitting, or sometimes it's, you know, catching our breath, having deep, it doesn't really matter what it is, but it's that state of mind, that peace of mind, that really is what's crucial.
Yeah.
to know it's not about time. You know, do we have the time to really help someone who's struggling? It's not about time. It's about the depth of feeling. It's about that connection, which can happen in a split second. I'm here to say that if the student is struggling in whatever way, when we accept a student for who they are in the moment, just accept them as is, it's so powerful. The intellect really kind of gets a break, and the peace of mind and the inner self can really connect. It's so it's not really about time, is it? It's about just that depth of feeling.
Thank you, Christa, for that. That was fantastic. Lovely story. I'm a teacher myself, and I just wanted to share something that's happened with me since I've come across the principles. I now use it to ground myself before I go into class or I go to work. And believe it or not, there's a coach who I think people may know of, Ankush Jain, in this group, has written a beautiful book called Sweet Sharing. And literally, I have to read a couple of chapters of that before I go to work, and it grounds me. And I stop being reactive to what the children are doing. So it allows me to do exactly what you're saying, be present. And I suppose my question really is, how important do you think that is when you're teaching this to children, the grounding of the person that's actually doing the teaching?
I think it's really important. You know, for years, so I've been using the principles in my work as a teacher since 1975, and trust me, we had nothing. We just had to. I just those teachable moments. You'd come up with something that would make sense in the moment to speak with someone. So it was really, it's all along. It's been about the feeling, and the student. Like I say, I've worked from K to 12, whether a teenager or a little kid, knowing that you see them, really see them as a person worthy of dignity. And the power of that is incredible. Then they know they don't have to be defensive or fight you, or they'll kind of go with you when you have, when you are creating their learning journey. They trust you to go with you on that journey. So I think it's incredibly important. So in fact, Rob, we were kind of debating, do we make a curriculum or do we not? And we determined that, well, even if a teacher is not feeling it or whatever, a child, a youth can read what were written on their own and can have an insight from that. And from that, we determined, well, let's write the curriculum, because obviously we think the feeling is so important. But even still, if a youth comes across this and reads one of the stories themselves and has an insight, bingo, it's good. But yeah, I love what you're saying about grounding yourself as you go into work. Beautiful.
Does that sound familiar, Mama J? The teachers turning up with love and just all trust.
You know what I was going to say, Derrick?
Go on.
That bit, you see them as a person worthy of dignity. That works when you're 47, right?
Say again? Yeah.
That works when you're 47, not just when you, yeah, right. Not just when you're 7.
Yes. Yeah.
The way you rounded off, Christa, is the way I had that moment of self-care, and I just knew what to do in the moment. I remember I'm locked up and I can't really do nothing to say this is my new changed self, but just seeing in the moment what I could do, and knowing that that moment would eventually come when I was outside, and I'd have that moment again outside, seeing that there was another option there, if that makes sense. Because what you were saying, everything you were saying, you can have that self-care, but it only cares you in the moment. Yeah. To say, oh yeah, next week I'll do that. That's another moment. for this moment, what can I do in self-care? And it all just drops away. And
Wow.
what happened to that boy is exactly sort of like what happened to me, but in a totally different setting. And when it fell away, I know there was no more work for him to do to stay good in school and to get his grades. Because you said the first test he done, he got 70%. So it was all in there already, but he was just, and then it all falls away, and then you just can go and live the real him or the natural him, which, like I said, at 47, I'm doing exactly what he was doing. And I'm just living and being a real me. So I love that stuff.
Wow.
Beautiful story. I say the principles are everywhere. The principles, it goes for one, it goes for everything. That's why we're all the same. And I don't know what this kid looked like, what his issues were, but he's the same as me, and I'm the same as him. And it's that same thing you said, Rob, when you ground yourself before going into an environment like that, you're closer to being to that person if you're coming from that grounded space. Just grounded and trust. That's brilliant. I like that.
And this really, as a teacher, this really affected me when I understood it, is that nobody can disrespect you without your permission.
Right.
So when I started to become aware of my role in that disrespect thing, that was a huge game changer for me.
And like you say, that game of it. Yeah. I know Sid often would tell me, it's this, we see the innocence in the children, but if he was talking to a kid, he would also say, see the innocence in your teacher, see the innocence in your parents. It's kind of like what Derrick was saying. It's the same for all of us, for each of us. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that as a teacher, you have the authority and don't disrespect me and all that, and then it's a bit of a war, offense, defense, and to just trust that seeing them, enjoying them, appreciating them, having fun with them is going to do the trick, and then they are on side with you, and like I say, will go with you on that learning journey. It's really and just think of that one boy, the ripple effect of that. His parents lived in different communities, but the joy they felt and how that would affect how they went to work each day, rather than fretting and, oh, is he going to be sent home and suspended, and can he manage what's going to happen when he graduates? Instead he's like, oh, look at him, he's being himself, he's being successful. And his sister, I knew, I worked with her as well, and she would worry about him, and just how helping one person, taking, having that opportunity to help one person, how that ripples out in our world. So powerful. And I love what Derrick was saying about how I'm okay in this moment. I can't maybe plan and do what I would do when I'm out, but I can be okay in this moment. And before you know it, the future is the present. And off you go with your peace of mind. Beautiful.
Christa, I wonder if you'd say something to something that occurred to me when Rob was talking about grounding yourself, which we all know is a good idea, but sometimes it doesn't feel like sometimes you can feel like you're not very grounded. An event may occur, or you're in your head about something, or whatever. And from what I've seen is that you can get grounded. And I wondered if you'd speak to that, like becoming grounded in the moment, if you like, or helping yourself in the moment to get present.
I felt really so fortunate virtually every day of my teaching career. And I have my reasons why I felt just a rush of love and gratitude for what I was stepping into. It took me a long time to actually get a job, because there aren't many on this island. But so just that feeling of gratitude and the beauty of nature on my drive, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. I do love, as I was saying, Sid's recordings, and I would have those on in the car, and it just kind of sets you back to square one. But just this feeling of privilege to be able to go and work with kids. I'm not overstating it. It really felt really wonderful to have this privilege of going in and actually having something of value to share. Now, I wasn't always in special education. Lots of times I was classroom teacher and teaching math, science, and all of that. But just to infuse some joy and lightheartedness. And I guess it's kind of obviously, you know, I'm a senior citizen, so I've experienced loss and separation, things in my family and extended family. But the ability to kind of be present, and whatever's happening, if there's some sadness in the personal life, to be able to leave that and just be present as you walk in. And there's so much life and joy with kids. You can really, it's like the perfect place to be grounded, because it's all happening right in front of you. So it's almost hard. I would think it would be hard to just be in your head when you're in a classroom full of kids.
I would say that about being in prison. Like it would be hard. I was so grateful and felt so blessed to do that work. It really didn't matter what was going on in my personal life. The minute I walked into that room and saw those little faces, I was just like, yeah, this is where I want to be. So there's something in there about the gratitude that brings you back to that, regardless to who you're working with. Sorry.
Absolutely, whatever the job. And I really think it's about, how do I want to live my life? I'm responsible for what I see and what I take on and how I perceive things. How do I want to live? And have a little soul searching there. Do you really want to have happiness? Well, choose it. So it's more about, what are my priorities? And am I, it's wonderful to have a philosophy, which I do, but am I living it? And the kids know, oh my gosh, right, Rob? And all the other teachers, they know if you're the real thing or if you're just kind of talking. They see they see how you live, they see how you act, they see how you treat them. So it doesn't really much matter what you say if the feeling isn't there, the feeling of mutual respect and dignity.
Hey, my big kids knew too. My big kids knew. Yes.
Like, I'm like the youngest. Do you know what I mean? I'm like the baby of the family. So I feel like meeting people that I was around Sid and know Sid, it's amazing to me, because like I am one of his dreams, isn't it? You know what I mean? For it to go on, and it will continue through me. So I just wanted to say it's a pleasure meeting you.
You too.
I have a 6-year-old and I have a nearly 13-year-old, and I want to introduce this. I mean, I've got a few books like What is Thought and a few other books that I read to my 6-year-old, and they're aware of this understanding, because I've sort of, over the last couple of years, I try to live it as best as I can. And, especially the 6-year-old one, she understands it better than the 12-year-old one. And she even told me, it's only a thought, So, but what I'd like to introduce your books to her. Which one do I start at?
This is lovely. It's a picture book.
Okay.
A picture book. It's lovely for any age. There's I was delighted to hear there's a psychiatrist in Italy. It's in Italian. a psychiatrist in Italy is using that picture book with, for example, a 16-year-old male client, and had wonderful discussions out of that. So picture books are good for any age. But for a 6-year-old, I would say the one with the purple clouds and the 2 owlets would be ideal.
And I read him that picture book, and you'd be amazed the conversation that we had afterwards. Because when she's saying, the mother's saying, yeah, you must fly the camp, you're going to fly the camp one day. And they're like, no, not me, not me. And when I asked him about the wisdom inside and what is that he started telling me about walking, and he knew how to walk before. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, someone just had to pick me up. Then I just started to walk. But he made that connection between flying and walking all by, he never worded it like, yeah, that's my, but when I asked him about his wisdom, he started talking about walking. And I just thought, wow, is there? Yeah, so for a 5-year-old on that, he got it. But then to go to the next stage, I have to go to the one just up from that, which I used on my 12 and 13, no, my 15 and 13-year-old. And yeah, that straight away, they were impacted. I haven't finished the series, but the first story that I told, if I could just go where something that you need something, same thing like that boy, he needed a computer, or he needed it in class, but then he went south. But having something and relying on it, and then when you get it taken away, and then you sort of realize that you don't need it anymore, the kids sort of just cracked on. And I was like, yeah. And my daughter was like, oh yeah, that's like kite blade. And I'm like, what? And she's talking about one little rabbit she had when she was young.
Oh.
She had 100 of them on her bed. And one day I just said, no, you got too many, pick one. And she goes, yeah, kite blade's my favorite, I'll pick him. So she picked him. One day I said, oh, I got rid of all of them, even kite blade. And for 1 year, kite blade was missing. And then one day she was going through, and she goes, oh, I found kite blade. She said, and to me, that was nothing. That needs to get thrown away. But to me, she said to me, she missed him for a year, thinking that she couldn't sleep, she couldn't do anything with that. But then she just realized, and when she got back kite blade, it was like, oh, yeah, put her on the pillow, then said, no, I don't, and then threw him away. but I never knew how much she had invested in that little rabbit. What I just saw some flea-ridden, because the air was leaking, and all the beads all around the house. You found little white beads that were coming out of the air, and I traced it back to this little bunny, and I said, right, it's got to go. That's all it was to me, but to her, it was something that, yeah. And I thought, wow, I didn't know that, but she saw that in that story straight away, and that to me was just like, yeah, powerful, yeah.
That's absolutely the point, is that the stories are kind of a springboard, if you will, and then let's really listen to them, because they know. And how many times have I been in teaching this, and the kids kind of say something, and then they kind of, who said that? I didn't know I knew that. It's kind of like whatever we want to, what seeds we plant, they'll help them flourish and grow and make those connections, like you're saying. In their own life, and that's what counts. That's that. I get it. For me, I'm making that personal connection, and I think that's really what we focused on with these books, is that we can give opportunities for the kids to connect with their own wisdom, and then you're off to the races once you know. Like I've been doing this for so long on this island. Some of the students I worked with who were really struggling and at risk of being suspended and kicked right out, that we taught them the principles. And now it's like 30 years later, and they have teenage kids, and it never, ever leaves them. As you know, once you have that sense of inner wisdom, you just tap it, you use it, you synchronize it with the intellect, and you make a beautiful life for yourself. So thank you for that, Derrick. Yeah, it's very powerful to hear the children.
One of the key things my eldest daughter kept on saying when we was talking was, oh, I've just realized that. And then, oh, I've just realized that. About she said, and I said, let me just leave her. I'm not going to go, let me just leave her with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've been busy in life and whatever. We haven't explored the rest of it. But the little that we have done, I've seen like, bang, immediate. recollection from them to their own stories that I know nothing about. And like I said, it's all personal to them.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say how touching it was to me that you, even when you were thinking maybe there's not a program, you didn't give up on him, and also that he didn't give up on you, that, you know, he stuck with you, you know, going through the book and you know, meeting with Bob, and it just really touched me, that.
Yeah. And it is very touching, because if you think of it, the boy had I mean, he's like 15, the young man had a strong relationship with his mother, certainly, but that was about it. So to let someone, and I'm here to say it is very touching, because in special education you have a one-to-one situation, and there they are, and they have to expose where they're at academically, and they're embarrassed, and they've been hiding for someone, you know, to admit. I've had a teenager admit, I don't know how to shape my letters anymore. Now, is that touching for a teenager to be able to admit that? And I'm there, I'm here with you. Great, that's where we'll start. And no worries, no problem. We will take you further. Now we know where you're at. Or someone who is struggling with math. There can be a lot of struggles around math and thinking around math. And for someone to stop and be in a situation where they're with someone they trust, and to be able to show, this is what I know. Okay, now let's take you further. And the beauty of this, I'm here to say, is it's almost like it's all half baked within them. And you have these teenagers that you maybe have fraction skills of a 7-year-old, and they're actually 15, but it doesn't take that many years. It doesn't take 8 years to catch up. Once your intellect calms down and you're using it in the right way, it's really quite, their timeline is much faster than what you might predict for them. So absolutely, it is very, very touching when a student trusts you to show their vulnerabilities and be in a position where they want to hear what you have to say.
And we certainly found that too, Christa, that it's like all boats rise with the tide, isn't it? You know, we worked with people who struggle to write and articulate and all of that. And, you know, I remember one person in particular, and he'd written a letter, and the letter was passionate and full of love and you know, wonderful, but really not very articulate, and lots of cussing in it, and, you know, all this sort of thing. And a year later he wrote a letter, and it was like a different person. The level, and he actually got tested, and the level of education had English had gone up without anything, just with that peace of mind, and that horrendous busyness that he was living in dropping away. And you could really see he was more articulate, he used less cuss words, you know. It was just incredible to see.
Isn't this wonderful that we, different situation, different age, different setting, different country, we hear the same essential outcomes? Isn't this, I just think it's something that we're so privileged to have a glimmer of. That's beautiful to hear. Thank you.
I'm just a bit taken aback by that. I think that's incredible. So as a teacher, I've never really considered that, but it actually makes sense when I think about it logically. If you have peace of mind and you can access your wisdom, then that's going to positively impact you in terms of your educational attainment. So I'm just blown away by that, but it's got amazing implications for the curriculum, right? And for where this information should go in the curriculum. And that's the other one. That's the thing I was going to ask, actually, is from your experience as a teacher, Like, where did it fit in? Was there a separate strand for it, or did individual teachers use it? How did it actually work?
Over the years, there's always been a place in our curriculum for wellness or mental health. And recently it's really become quite prominent in our jurisdiction. So you just kind of look for it. Is it under health? It's very important under anything to do with career education, extremely important there. Because if you're caught up in your intellect, you struggle with accepting directions, with, having insights and inspiration to do a good job, to collaborate with people. But I think the reason I wrote it as a language arts curriculum, that was my main goal, was that it would fit with language arts. Any story really can be used to point to the principles and the power of intuition or innate wisdom. And so I wrote it so that you could do report cards for language arts at any of the levels, K through high school. But really, and if I was just teaching math, I might start the year with something like this, just to get everyone, isn't that beautiful about the logic, Rob? I'm so glad you saw that. Because if our intellect is being misused for things that it's not meant to be used for, we don't have that horsepower to use it for the academic learning. So it's just really vital. But I hope that answers your question. But I know in, do you still have PSHE?
Yeah.
Yeah, I aligned it with PSHE for the UK. But I do think it could be for English language arts as well.
Well, I'm an English teacher, so that will help me.
Yeah. It's if you were to look at the stories and the reflections and the writing prompts that come out of that, you could have yourself, a part of an English program. My last year, I actually was called back to the high school because they were short. So I came out of retirement and worked another year. And it was very fortunate for me. I'd just written the secondary curriculum. And so I was able to pilot it that year. And I created a course. The kids wanted peer counseling. And so I was asked, would I use this curriculum and for the peer counseling? And so I gave full high school credit, grade 11 and 12, for a peer counseling, which is a locally developed course.
I think you should just blow your own trumpet a little bit and tell us all how many languages that you've had your curriculum translated into, and the different schools. And
oh, we're just thrilled, to be honest. Kathy Marshall Emerson is my partner in this, as is Jane Tucker for the series as well. But Kathy's Marshall Emerson is the director of the National Resilience Resource Center. And for decades, she would do 3 principles workshops with government grants for teachers. And they were always asking for a curriculum. And so when I retired, I saw this call for curriculum and thought I'd love to do it, and did. But it's global. So we have French and Spanish. Currently, it's being translated into Hebrew. Portuguese is, they've already got the layout for the first one ready. It's gorgeous. Italy, Romania, and tomorrow I'm speaking with someone who's interested in German. So we're like, it's so fun to work with these. As I was telling Jacqueline, everybody's a young man and a young woman to me. But it's a thrill to work with these young men and women who are interested in translating the material. And it's so fun because basically all they do is change the characters' names to be more suitable to their culture. And the essence of it works wherever we are in the world. So again, the principles are so simple and so profound. It's really such an honor to have this to share. And I think the grounding comes out of that feeling of gratitude for this. Yeah. Jane, the other day, Jane Tucker, co-author, and she was telling me a little bit about when she worked in a prison library in the US, and that little project that she created that I wondered if we could maybe do something. But what she created was she got books donated, and then the inmates would record. Back in the day when we had CDs, they would record themselves reading the book for their children, and then it became a gift for the child to hear dad or mom reading the story, and then they got the paper version as well. I just thought that was, and it was, she said it was such a successful project. Everyone involved loved it, but it was kind of got me wondering, how would one do that now that we don't do CDs anymore? But I just thought it was a beautiful way of sharing.
Wow. So I've just published a book, and part of the book that we've published is that the proceeds are all going. By the way, I've just published a book. I'm going to pause there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And the proceeds are going to a charity called Storybook Dads, which is exactly that. So they work with the people in prison, and they read a book and they tape it and they give the CD to the family. They can't at the moment because of lockdown, but they still will be doing that. And so I might be able to ask if they could read The Missing Link or Eliza.
Yes, absolutely. And I would give permission to read any of those stories as well. But Dear Liza, absolutely. And someone was telling me whenever that it's a perfect book for couples. And I'm like, oh, of course it is. Oh, someone just sent me a message. Oh, nice. So it's a book about couples as well. Isn't that beautiful, Jacqueline?
Yeah.
For children.
Yeah. Wow. What a brilliant. I never even thought about that. Wow. That's a brilliant. I'll send Jane my love.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Rob's remark, this understanding can be woven into any subject in school. Just like we do with literacy and numeracy, well-being can be woven into any subject. You could have history and be talking about the plague. It can be woven into any subject. And if I could just share a 2-minute story from Thursday, something that happened at school with a little girl. So this beautiful soul, she's 11 years old, and she's her and her brother have experienced quite extreme childhood trauma. So it's affected her, but she's a lovely kid. She gets judged a bit. And so I was in a class of 15 students supporting them, and I stepped out to get some photocopying. And she was sitting on the floor. And so I bent down and I said to her, "Are you okay?" And she just shook her head, because sometimes you have to connect without words. And I said, "Can you tell me how you're feeling at the moment?" And she said, "Sad." And I said, "Do you know why you're sad?" And she said, "No." So I said, "Well, that feeling of sadness isn't going to be with you all day. Now, I know you've got break in 20 minutes, and I know you like running around with your friends. So when you're running around, that feeling of sadness will pass. Now, it may come back later in the day, but I want you to know it won't be with you all the time. It will pass." And then I finished by saying, "I just want you to know that you're a beautiful person inside." And then I said, I'm just going to go and get my photocopy. And I was away for 2 minutes. And when I came back, she was back in the room on her computer working.
Oh,
Yeah. It was
beautiful.
It was beautiful. It's really nice. It's just connecting through love, isn't it?
Yes, that's so beautiful. Thank you, Wendy. And isn't it just so fantastic how little it takes? Like you say, you're kneeling down, you're on your way to do a little errand, and changed her whole perspective. But yeah, that, can you imagine what life is? Well, we don't want to, but if you don't know that it won't pass, these kids feel so, it feels hopeless. And what you're doing by saying the truth of the matter is offering hope. And hope is the first step, the first feeling of action, of on a different, a healthy path. That's so beautiful, Wendy. And yeah, and I would agree also, Wendy, that we can weave it in. In fact, it was so interesting. The teens would come to the peer counseling meetings we would have, the class we would have once a week, and they'd say, wow, just like you're saying, wow, this just connected with my history class or whatever class. They start to see the connections. As one youth called it, he says it's the 3 principles are like the decoder ring. Once you've got the decoder ring, you see what's going on in your world and you know the truth of the matter. So thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, just very quickly, Christa, it just makes me feel so good to hear that this is out there and that the change is really, really happening. The ripples are just, they're going at such a great speed. And I just wonder, I'm part of an ACEs initiative. It's Adverse Childhood Experiences. I'm sure, I'm just wondering, there's quite a few in Canada. Are you part of any of those?
I couldn't quite understand. Say the name of it again.
It's Adverse Childhood Experiences, the ACEs study. And again, it's about childhood trauma, and it was a research that was done on, was actually started through an obesity clinic, and they found the link between children or between adults with certain illnesses and mental illnesses, physical illnesses, and things that had happened to them as a child. So emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and then also stuff within the home, so domestic violence, and just different, like there's a kind of a list of things. But for me, I think the best thing that, people that have had these experiences is to understand this. Like, I know I score on it quite a few, and the difference that it made to me, again, I would have struggled in school because I just couldn't take it in. My mind was so full of what was going on at home that I just couldn't, and the difference in my learning now, it's like I can't get enough of it, like, and because my mind is so much quieter, and yeah, so it just makes me very excited, and I'm hopeful maybe I could send you something on it and just see, is there a link? Maybe, it's just that I know in Canada and all around the world, I'm part of it's ACEs Connection. It's a social sort of website that shows initiatives all around the world that are helping to build resilience and just making people aware, trauma informed and all of that kind of stuff. And I just think what's happening in the 3 principles communities, there's so many initiatives that are helping people to build resilience, and to think that they could maybe, I don't know, maybe join forces or, and just, to make that difference for people to understand and give them back the hope because you can feel quite hopeless at times, you know.
It's such important work to help those who feel damaged in any way from what happened to them as a child. It's really very, very important work.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful story, a two-part story in the teen book of My Guide Inside, and it's about someone who was abused and is kind of fighting society and learns about the 3 principles and is able to find that peace of mind we're talking about. And then part 2 of the story is like 5 years later, this individual is at college and is doing a practicum to become an education assistant, and helps a 10-year-old with the same situation. And why did we write that story? These are all true stories. Why is that so important to include? Because so often when someone who's had an abusive incident or number of incidents, when they learn about the principles and, like you're saying, the hope, then they are so inclined to want to be in the helping profession and help someone else overcome what they've overcome. So thank you for that. I'd love to know more. Thank you.
He's here, look. Yay! Whoop, whoop.
Do you know what? I had to show my face. I had to. I'm sorry. Life gets so busy.
Yeah.
Life gets so busy, but it's just.
It does. It does.
It's knowing that love, just that love there that you lot are speaking about. I could just feel it, man. All the way home in the car, just feeling it, and it's like I've always valued the youth.
Yes.
For some reason, and I can't pinpoint, I've always valued the youth. And where I grew up, it wasn't really like that, but I still had that. And beautiful. Even on my bad roots, I was trying to invest in children because I had a youth, we had a little youth development group, a little business, and we called it Wise Choice.
Oh.
And at that particular moment, I didn't know, like, I didn't know what I know now. But we called it Wise Choice.
Wow.
And then
beautiful.
That's always been my passion, you know, and just to show love. Even the other day, because I moved to a new area, and I saw a couple of kids playing basketball, and I thought, you know what, let me just get them some waters.
Oh.
You know what I mean? So I got them some waters, and then the next day, I'm playing with them. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, come on, yeah, and I'm playing with them. So now I got these little 12-year-old friends and 13-year-old friends. Do you know what I mean? But the 3 principles mixed with I feel like it will give everybody strength from young.
Yes.
Because that's the strength I never had from young.
Yes.
And I've got that strength now, and I can see how resilient it could be from a young age. So I just love that. I love it.
Beautiful. Isn't that so true? The younger, the better. And how wonderful to just so informally to have these new friends and, you know, give them water and play with them. I mean, that's not little in their mind. If anybody gives them any sort of attention, and it's golden. So that's 100%. Wonderful. Nice to meet you.
You too.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Like he just drops in and sprinkles.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been so rich and, well, just delightful. Like, that's how I feel. It's just delightful. The whole group feels full of hope and natural, and you know, you've shown in writing, they say show don't tell, right? You've shown us, and we're really grateful for that, and thank you very much.
I just got my son there, and I was just telling him that's the woman who wrote the book about the owl. And what did you say to me?
I said it kind of makes me funny and it makes me happy.
Oh, yay. How old are you? 5?
5.
I'd like to guess. I have a 5-year-old in my family too. You'd be good friends.
Okay.
You'd have a Canadian friend.
Okay.
Okay. Beautiful. Nice to meet you.
We have to bring Shamari when we all go to Canada then, Derrick, now.
Yes.
We're all coming over, Christa.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole Beyond family is coming.
Awesome.
So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. And we'll see you in the Facebook. And next week we have Dave and Omar. Dave and Omar. Thank you again so much, Christa.
Pleasure. Nice to meet everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.